Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Tuesday. It's January 11th. This will be our chart lesson for the day, and the day's much like yesterday. We started off with a strong sell-off, found a bottom, and then rallied the rest of the day. The rally was actually a little stronger today. I called yesterday a reversal day, but this truly looks like a reversal day. So, I mean, we're going to close unless this thing sells off. We still got another 30 minutes or so to go. So unless this thing sells off strongly, there's a chance we may close near the high today. So we'll just have to see. Um, I should be done with this chart lesson before that point. As usual, there's probably some other trades you could argue for in here. There's a lot of price action here, a lot of movement, and I'm trying to stick to the ones that make sense and are pretty straightforward, and avoid the ones that can be a little iffy or whatever. And again, there's probably some you could argue to be green. There might even be some that are right on the borderline. You might even could argue you like them for some reason or whatever. So if I don't call out every trade that you see, doesn't mean that you're wrong or that I'm right or that I'm wrong or you're right. Either one. So um, a lot of what we see basically, if you're following the rules and you're following the strategy, there's going to be some trades that fall in those areas where it just depends on your risk tolerance and how you're reading it and how you're seeing it. And I may see a trade that I just don't like it, and for whatever reason you do like it, or vice versa. So, um, yeah, just because I don't mark a trade doesn't mean that there's not some argument for it or some reason you couldn't have taken it. So, um, if it failed, then you probably took the wrong trade. But if it worked, because there are some in here that if you want to be a little more aggressive, or you could obviously take them. So just keep that in mind. But you can see the day, and like yesterday, we had this big rally and then a two-legged correction, and then we took off again. And those are two measured legs of correction right there, and then that turned out to be the low point of the rest of the day, and we've been rallying ever since. Really slowed down now. We probably won't get a whole lot of more movement between now and closing, but you never know. Something could happen any minute. It could take off. But I'm going to back out or zoom in here, and we'll go through these trades. 7 o'clock came just as we're making this little low right in here. And this was a nice second entry. Unfortunately, not a very good signal bar. It is a little congested, but being off that trend line, if you had a good signal bar, by all means, you'd want to take that trade. But unfortunately, it's just not a very good signal bar. There was a lower high right here, but I didn't like where this sets up. Um, I think it's a little risky. You'd want this to be closer to the EMA, and if it was, or right off the other trend line, I'd say take that trade. But it's just not a point where, I mean, it could easily tick lower and turn up back to the trend line and then turn back down. It is a really bearish bar on a lower high, so it's one of those where if you took it, it's probably okay, but it's not a great setup. Those setups can fail a lot, happening until you're right in a spot like that. So just be careful with them. Um, there may be enough room to scalp out there, and in that case, that might give it a little more room. I didn't measure it specifically, but you could take a look at it. If there's enough room to scalp out right there, and you took that trade, then I don't see any problems with it. But I didn't mark it. I just think it's a little too risky right there. But we did drop on down. You made a new low here, and then you get a first entry and a second entry right at the key entry point. Relatively bearish bar. I marked this one green because it's definitely congested. I mean, those bars are side by side, and it's not quite back to the EMA, but it is a second entry with a nice bearish bar, and there is room to get out here. So you may take that one. We just don't, we've got this nice downtrend here, and we just didn't get any really good setups. And you get a second entry right here, but that signal bar is too weak. That's almost a neutral. It's bearish, but there's just too much stem right there with that trend line working up. And we never really get a close outside the new high. We actually do. It's all in one bar. I marked this one green because it's just such a bearish bar in a downtrend like this, and that's the first break of the trend line. But again, it's not a great setup. There is a better lower high here. I don't think I would go short at the very low of this bar, right into that's the low of the day. You can see that that's even lower than the overnight low. So I wouldn't go short there, but this broke higher first and turned down. So you may take that on the engulfing bar. If you didn't take it that way, I would mark this probably green because it's just, or I may not even mark it because there's just not enough room to get out. And you can see it did bounce temporarily before it went lower, and it's very possible that it could have bounced here and stopped you out before it went lower. So that's what you got to be careful of. So drop on down, and finally you get a second entry here. You've already had a break and a new low, so you got to be careful here as well. But you've got resistance across here as well. So with this being a first entry, second entry, relatively bearish signal bar, and the fact that we tried to go higher once, twice, and then we tried to go higher really several times in here, but I'd only count that the third try and before it fails. So I like that short. And then we bounce here and you get a first entry, and that is a second entry short. I didn't mark this one because we have a clear trend channel working up, and that's the first close outside. It is a long way away from the EMA, so this is another one. You could argue for it to be green probably. It's a really bearish bar and it's very tempting, but it's also congestive too. So those can trap you, especially since we've had a break and a new low. I don't think you want to try to go long yet, but you got to be real careful going short. It looks like there's a failure here, but it's on the wrong side of the EMA. It turns out to be a really nice move, but it doesn't set up right. And then finally, we make another new low and we bounce. Look how this pushes right through the EMA, pulls back, tries to go higher, pulls back again, and fails on that second entry short. This did not actually close above the EMA, but you have to go long above the high of this bar, which is above the EMA. So if it breaks higher, you're probably going to get a scalp at a minimum out of that. And it could be a reversal. It's not a perfect setup, but I like it enough based on the overall picture here that they're probably going to run some stops on that. And you can tell it was a trap by how fast it rockets up. And look at that big bar. That's a sure trap. And then a few minutes later, you get a second entry long. Only problem with it is this bar is really big, and you got to go long very near the highs here. So the only way I would take this is let it break higher. And then drop a limit order a little further back, and then try to get a little better entry on that one. Sorry, that was my phone ringing in the background. I silenced it. So again, I'm not crazy about this one, but it does confirm that trend line. It is a bullish bar. It is a second entry. There's a lot of things to like about it. It's just a really big bar, and you got to go long very close to the high. So you'd have to let that break higher and drop a limit order. And you could have gotten filled a little bit further back in that bar. Then we run up. You get another second entry here, but that's an inside bar. Not a very good setup. It would have worked, but it's just not a good setup. Another second entry. Again, not a good enough signal bar. And we're just kind of chopping sideways here. I don't see anything I like, long or short, in here. There's nothing that really looks like a good setup. This is rejection right here, but it's just a double test. You might look at that as a high or low, but I think you're better off to wait and see if you get that triple test, which comes here. But we make a new low, and so again, I don't like it. And you can see we continue to work lower here, and finally we get a second entry short. This failed breakout finally turned this thing down again, and you got this channel working down. You get a first entry, second entry, and that's a very nice bearish bar on a second entry short. That turns out to be a nice trade. We do get a close outside and a new low, and then we're just kind of, prices are trying to reverse, but there's really no real direction here. This is just not very good price action for knowing what prices are doing. Look how flat that is. We do make a double bottom here, a little bit of a higher low actually, and then we push through the EMA, we pull back, we get a first entry short and then a second entry short. And This is actually a first entry long that turns down. So when it breaks higher here, that's a second entry long as well. So there's a second entry long and a failed second entry short. And I liked that trade just because it's probably going to trap some shorts there. And you can see that it did. Look how it rockets up. And most breakouts tend to come back and test these breakout areas again. And it's possible we can get a reversal here as well, because this is all played out and this has just mostly been sideways and there's been strong support down here. So at the very least, you're probably going to get a bounce here, even if you're not going to get this rocket higher. And it does take off. Unfortunately, I don't see any good opportunity to really get in this on the way up. There is a second entry here, but it doesn't break higher until you get this. Let me zoom in here a little closer. This inside bar, and that's not a good sign. That's definitely congested right across there. And you can see it took it a minute to take off. It does take on off, but it's just not a good setup. And this right here is why you got to be careful, because it could turn down and stop you out before it goes higher. And it just chops on higher, and we never really get a good setup here. Finally, we start going sideways, and you get a triple test. I marked this one. This is real close to being green. It is a triple test in an uptrend. It is off the EMA. So I really thought we'd at least push to make a new high. I didn't know it would really take off like that, or didn't think it would, but first it doesn't like it's going to do anything. It looks like a bad choice. But most of the time, these triple tests, you can count on those, especially if it's with the trend. Normally, if you test something 3 times and it holds prices like it did here, it's gonna eventually push higher, even if at least enough for a scalp. And so that's the reason I like that one. We do run on up and turn down, and again, it's just real uncertain what prices are doing here. They're chopping higher, but it's very choppy, and this could happen to you at any time. It's just not worth trying to trade this. I don't see anything in there that I would be interested in until we get this measured leg down, 2 legs down, and then we get another reversal right here. Notice how you run up, you get a first entry, you push on through, you come back, you get a second entry. Again, this does not close or bounce off the EMA, but it does close right at it, and you got to go long above it. So I like that one, just to try to get a scalp. You would have got a little more than that most likely. Then it comes back and gives you a second entry long right here. Again, we're back below the EMA, and you don't really have this trend line confirmed yet. So it just feels like sideways. You can see how flat the EMA is. So I'm not crazy about that one, but the bias is still up at this point. It is a second entry long. It is a nice signal bar. So if you took it, I marked it green, but I'm not crazy about it. When we didn't take off here, it really bothered me about that setup. So but it does take on off, kind of chop sideways. We're still working higher here. I did draw this trend channel and pull it to the top just in case. We do get another reversal right here. Notice the new low, first entry, second entry, and you do have to go long above the EMA there. This one obviously didn't trap a lot of people. It didn't really take off until here. I don't see anything here I like. This one was really tempting, but you got to go long at the high of the day. And we moved a good bit, so it's just not as much as I like that setup. I just don't think it's worth risking. So you could look at a failure here, but it's so far away from the EMA, I don't really like it. And there's also a second entry here that's really tempting, but it's obvious we just came off the upper side of this yellow channel, and the odds are not good that we're going to run up there and hit it again. So we do, but I didn't mark that one. If you took it, I mean, it's real tempting, but I'm telling you, those are the ones that will trap you a lot, and so I just couldn't see marking that trade, even though it worked out. Most of the time, this would be not a good choice. We do get another triple test here, but again, we're bouncing off this top multiple times, and it's time to go lower. And I just couldn't see risking that one either. Again, it works, and it is a triple test, and it's a really good signal bar. And looks like there's probably room to get out right there, but I didn't. That late in the day, I just didn't see worth risking that trade, and I didn't mark it. So again, there's a lot of price movement here today, but it's not always straightforward. A lot of it's real choppy. It's like we chop along, and then you get a nice move, and then you chop around, and then you get a nice move, and you chop around, and I mean, when you don't just get a trend that's like these, it makes it much harder to trade. And even here where we had a trend, there's not a lot of good setups. So this price action has not been really easy to trade, I guess is the way I would put it. The market turns on a dime. It can be trending strongly one way and then suddenly trending just as strongly opposite. I mean, it's, you're trending straight up here, and then all of a sudden you're trending straight back down. It ends up going higher before it's over, but this runs everybody out and scares everybody out and makes it really hard to determine what prices are going to do. And so this is not easy price action. So if you find a good trade in there, take them. Wait. You may not get a better opportunity, I guess is what I'm saying. So obviously don't force a trade. I'm not telling you to force a trade, so make sure you understand that. Sometimes people hang on every word I say, and they'll get hung up on some of the simplest things and take it the wrong way. So don't do that. But if you get a good solid trade that makes sense, take it. But don't force trades at the same time. So I hope that's clear. But anyway, I'm not going to beat around the bush. I'm getting stronger. I'm still not 100%. I'm probably going to continue just to kind of take it easy this week and start back to trading next week. So that's kind of what I've decided at this point. My mind I'm still having a hard time concentrating for long periods of time. So I'm only able to work a little bit and then relax a little bit and work a little bit. So anyway, we've got almost 20 minutes here, and that's pushing it for me. So I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next.